YouTube, how are we doing? We're back for another day. It's going to be a push focus session today. We are back at LA Fitness again, so we're going to give it another try, see if it's going to become our home for a little short-term stint before we get into a different facility. And we have a banger chest day, honestly. I'm looking forward to rinsing chest today. I feel kind of like I haven't had a good chest day stimulus for a little while, so this session is going to be important. And one thing that's on my mind right now, some discussions that I've been having over on TikTok regarding time under tension. So I got asked the question recently on whether progressive overload or time under tension is more important. They asked me to do a little blog post about it, so I've just finished that blog post, and I posted a quick video basically just to explain some of the key concepts that I'm thinking. And then of course what we get is in the comments, time under tension is not important for hypertrophy, doesn't cause hypertrophy, and you shouldn't be thinking about it. And the thing is, that's kind of a bit misinformed, if I'm being honest, with the concept. Now, if we think of time under tension as just doing controlled tempo with low load, then is it the most important for hypertrophy? Probably not, but it does still show that there is some muscle growth effect there because training is training. But where I think that a lot of people get this wrong is that they'll just then regurgitate what somebody else has said, and they'll say, well, all you need is mechanical tension. Now the thing is, like, if we think about the construct of time, right? We can't have any tension if there is no time. So if we don't produce a muscle contraction and there's a little bit of force in that contraction over a period of time, we can't have any mechanical tension. So time under tension is somewhat important. Now there is a semantic there because typically that's not what people are referencing when they talk about time under tension. What they're normally referencing is doing a controlled eccentric and then a controlled tempo for the concentric and then a pause in the top and the bottom positions. Normally denoted by a number where it'd be 1/1, which would mean a 1 second eccentric, a 1 second pause, a 1 second concentric, a 1 second pause, right? Now, that's where I draw the line in where more time under tension from a tempo perspective doesn't mean more mechanical tension. So that's where the less importance of time under tension for hypertrophy might come into play. Now the thing is, there's still a bit of a caveat to that, in that probably the time under tension, or let's actually now call it the time under contraction, is more important in the eccentric phase than it is in the concentric phase. So what we want in the eccentric phase is a way of overloading, and the only way we can get that if we don't do super maximal weight compared to our concentric phase is by overloading time and time under tension, giving the muscle fibers a little bit of time to attach, and also with tighten being there to provide some some isometric force in that contraction too. So basically the time in the eccentric phase is probably, or time under contraction in the eccentric phase is probably a little bit more related to muscle hypertrophy than the time spent in the concentric phase. Now the more driver, the higher driver of mechanical tension is typically concentrically in traditional training. So that's where people have latched onto this idea, well, we don't need time under tension because all we do is just do a concentric rep, right? But that's not always the case either, especially within the Sato study that looked at the elbow flexors and actually showed that concentrically with I think it was a 2 second tempo, didn't have much of an effect on muscle hypertrophy. So you could then take that and say, well, they should do it faster, they should do more repetitions, something like that. Now, the caveat again is, let's think of it now not as time under tension, but time under contraction. So when we actually think about the concept of time under contraction, what we can say in an indirect way is the number of repetitions that we do in a given set or for a given muscle group within a session. Now, when we say that, everybody's in agreement that that's important for muscle hypertrophy, especially when those repetitions are taken to close to near failure, right? So effective repetitions. So the thing is, if that's the case, then if we do more effective repetitions, then we're doing more time under a contraction, right? So think about it this way. if I get 80% of my max load and I do 3 repetitions, right? And I've got 5 repetitions in reserve, that isn't really going to get me too many effective reps. Maybe 1, maybe 2, right? So the time under contraction based on the repetitions is lower. Now, if I did a set to failure and let's say I hit my 8 repetitions there, my time under contraction is longer. So the time under tension indirectly by the time under contraction is longer. So that is where I think that we get a little bit mixed up and confused with what time under tension really is. It's probably been poorly defined, I think, in the literature and the way that studies are constructed, because again, in a repetition, even with a tempo, if I have a 2-second eccentric and a 4-second concentric, which is very rare, but let's say we do have that, that is different to a 4-second eccentric and a 2-second concentric. But the time under tension is 6 seconds in those 2 contractions. So basically, what we've got to consider is the time under the contraction. And probably, if I'm willing to go out on a bit of a whim here, I would say that it's more important for the eccentric phase, and we still want to be as fast as possible for the concentric phase. So hopefully that makes sense. That was a bit of a ramble there, but a bit of education on time under tension before we smash this chest day, where we're going to get some more time under tension there as well. So we'll see you in the gym. All right. So jumping straight into chest day today, a little bit of a quick one. We'll go warm up with pec deck, a little 10 rep warm up, and then what we'll do is hit 2 working sets before we move into some of our pushing variations. Again, I've been switching to pec deck a little bit more with those flies. Now, what I have been seeing dotted around is people doing these things with their elbows on the machine arms, so shorter in the lever arm, which means generally we don't create as much joint torque, which means we can then load it a little bit higher because the moment arm is shorter. So thought process there is then more motor unit recruitment, more mechanical tension. I'm still kind of at a crossroads whether that actually is necessarily the main effect there. It might actually just be reducing joint stress, taking out one of the main joints, elbow joint and stuff, but I don't think that's too much of a limiting factor, if I'm being honest, for chest growth. But each to their own on that one. So what have we got next? Put the weight up. And then we'll hit this second set. So I think that was 5 reps, which we wanted to be in that 5 to 7 range for this first set. And now we're going to drop it down, a little back off, go into a slightly higher repetition range. So I guess for people watching out there, what do we think about LA Fitness? Can we get good bodybuilder workouts in here? It has all the equipment. It might not necessarily be as advanced as maybe some other facilities, but might be the one for a little temporary pit stop. It's close by, it's fairly local to me, so might be one to have as a consideration. And just as we rest here, I'm actually going to take a slightly little bit longer rest than I normally do. We are hitting a morning session, and normally I'm not as fired up in the morning. It normally takes me a few sets to really get into stuff, and I just kind of want to maximize the sets that we're in. And so could have done a couple of feeder warm-up sets. Probably now on reflection would have been more smart to do that, but basically this session is typically what I perform in the PM a lot of times, so that's kind of what I'm doing, is what's down on paper. I should have probably reflected and changed it there a little bit. I also definitely did, oh no, I did it right. All right. Let's hit this next set. Oh, damn. Did I? Damn. I don't know if that was fatigue or I changed the resistance arc of the machine. I'm gonna have to go down and do a little drop set here. I mean, that's just not feeling any lighter. Kind of almost feels like it's exactly the same resistance. All right, we'll finish our pec deck there. Very weird. All right, we got tricep dips. Gotta find a place to be able to do that. All right, next up, we get some heavy tricep dips. So today's workout is a little lower volume in terms of the first set repetitions, and then on some of the exercises we're going to go slightly heavier than what we've done in the past, and then on others we're going to keep them right where we need to. And so I don't think there is any perfect equation when it comes to volume and exposure, as long as we're getting in a close proximity to failure. That's generally what matters most. I could have got that fifth one there. That was me bitching out of a rep. All right, so this one we're gonna stay at this weight just because we're hitting fives. Treat it as kind of a hybrid cluster with a little longer rest. Okay, all right. We're gonna go higher in volume of repetitions. Oh. All right, so we took that 2-minute rest period. slightly lower weight, so 20 less pounds. So aim here is to get into double digits if we can. That's what it says on paper. Almost. All right, we hit 9 there. So if the repetition range is important, all we can do is a quick rest pause. So a little brief rest, and then hit these next little couple of reps. Alright, that's good. So you might be wondering, why the hell do we start with triceps at the start of the session instead of a chest push press, considering that now, if we do push, triceps will be a little bit fatigued. They're generally a limiting factor in chest pressing. So my thought process here is, gets my chest open, which feels good, but also because the triceps are a little bit fatigued, we should be able to get a little bit more load directed towards the chest. Now, I don't have any empirical evidence to suggest that. All right, so we originally had low incline, but we're going to flick over to flat bench instead. And always a good test of strength for me is how many reps I can get at 225. So that's where we'll see where our strength's at this morning with this. I feel like these iron grip plates are way heavier for some reason. Have no juice this morning, clearly. Normally I'm repping that for 10 to 12. I'm grinding 6. Also the bench here is rather slippy, so could do with a little yoga mat. Kind of felt myself sliding down the bench as I was pushing there, which is never ideal because then you get energy leakage. So we're gonna chalk the excuses up there, blame the bench, and blame that it's the morning time. So we do have one more set of this. I think I'm just going to do back off, potentially. I haven't decided yet whether to do that or stick here. We'll check the program and then we'll make our decision based on what we should do. But yeah, that's a massive loss of strength, honestly. So I don't think the time off was that detrimental. So, because I am yawning, I am going to say that it's because of the time of day. So I'm supposed to be hitting between 9 and 12 on this next set based on the program, so I will reduce the weight. Oh, what a few people might be thinking here is, Craig, you cooked your triceps as the first exercise, so no wonder your pushes are feeling a little bit more of a detriment there. And that also could be true. I definitely feel like it is the triceps that are a bit of a limiting factor, that the
chest is definitely getting some direct targeted load, so it is what it is. We can chalk it up as some fractional sets for triceps under fatigue, whatever. But again, the next time we do this session, what I'll do is I'll just put the incline bench at the start of the session, but we're still in our ranges for our numbers, so what we would expect our typical variance to be. So again, like I said, I'm normally getting 10 to 12 with 225. That would be in my most fresh state, fed state, doing it as the first exercise after a couple of warm-ups, doing it in the afternoon where muscle temperature is slightly higher. And I didn't have coffee this morning. I don't really use caffeine too much, but today could have been a coffee morning because the dog woke me up pretty early, so I didn't get as much sleep as I would normally get. That shit sucks. Alright, so made a little mistake in that I left one of my cuffs at home. So we're gonna do single arm chest fly. And we don't have a bench to be able to do this in a seated position. It's a little makeshift cuff, roughly at the forearm close to the elbow, and we hold on for a little bit of added stability because we can't sit. And I gotta go and check my other gym bag because my other cuff is in there. So that's something that we have to do today for the next session. So the weight was fairly reasonable. Whenever I've been doing the seated 2-arm, I've been kind of around the 80 to 100 pounds, 90 on average. So I'll actually go up slightly because we did hit, I think it was like 10 reps there. Probably had maybe 1-ish rep in reserve if we really tried to push. So a little bit of rest. And again, I want to touch on something that we talked about in the car, but the time of the tension here, what I am trying to be is explosive in my concentric and then controlled in the eccentric. So having a little bit of control on the way back so we don't just free fall. And then you'll notice on that right side, I did kind of have a dead stop as well. let's see what's next on the agenda. Actually done with flies, and my camera battery is dying, so we're just gonna get our sets in. Do as much as you can here. Let's see if I can full stack this. It says it's 95. Nope. Oh, probably 80. It's probably good, I think. We'll restart that, I think. I'm definitely overestimating this machine. It shows the differences in cable pulleys and cable stacks, because this one goes up to 97, unless it's in kgs, which I doubt. But normally my program has 120, so let's assume that this is half of the stack, so we'll go 62-ish. Let's get this set in. We haven't had this one in our program yet, but machine creature car. Gotta make that seat higher. I'm thinking about splitting this up into AM, PM instead of just getting everything done this morning. So we're gonna see how much more we can get out before we have to get back. Bicep curls done. I think we'll do PM session. They do have some kickbacks. Yeah, sure. There you go. You got it. So we just did a bunch of different sets in terms of the way that we can do a tricep kickback or a tricep extension. And I got a question recently on TikTok about how the best way to train that is. And essentially, in any session, if we have a kickback, we have a overhead, we're going to hit all parts, the 3 heads of the triceps, and we're probably going to train them most effectively. But if we were to do a push-down variation, the question becomes, where should we put our elbow and arm position? And so the long head is most leveraged in that neutral shoulder position, so it's thought that that's where it's going to get the most growth. Yet, when we look at studies, what we actually see is the overhead position generally causes a little bit more growth for the long head, and it also hits the medial lateral heads as well. So the thing is, there is no right or wrong answer. What I would say is, when you're kind of doing your tricep pushdowns and they're kind of out in here in front with a little bit more elevation, might not be as effective as having a little bit more shoulder extension, so a kickback. So that'd be my general thought process there. So if you have a kickback in your session and an overhead extension in your session, then you're probably on the right road for tricep growth.
All right, so we run out of time a little bit there, so that means we'll hit a PM session. Honestly, I don't really like training too hard in the morning, so that's why a lot of the time I'm normally doing cardio or something like that in the morning. A lot of my sessions are generally in the evenings, afternoons. Just feel like muscle temperature is better, more energy, feel a little bit more prepared and stuff like that. But that could also come with its caveats because it's a long work day and things. But essentially, where we're at, we'll do a bit more of an arm and shoulder focused session tonight. So we'll get a little PM session in, so I'll do a little PM video as well. So we talked a little bit about mechanical tension. So we did some stuff on the triceps at the end there as well. And so make sure you're following